An early start to midterm election excitement.
Arizona is a really interesting place for, I think, people who are interested in politics all over the country to look.
Hands-on experience, military training in a civilian hospital.
They do get to come home every night. You know, we're obviously away from home enough, so it's a great morale boost.
Plus the value of early childhood education.
The first 5 years of a young child's life, 90% of their brain is being developed.
Hello and welcome to Arizona 360. I'm Lorraine Rivera. Thank you so much for joining us. This week, candidates for the 2018 election filed with the Secretary of State. When it comes to voters, here's a look at the latest numbers from the Secretary of State's office. As of March 2018, there are more than 3,610,000 registered voters in Arizona. By party, that breaks down to 1.2 million Republicans, 1.2 million voters registered as independents, nearly 1.1 million Democrats, 31,000 Libertarians, and nearly 6,800 Green Party voters. Here in Pima County, party leaders are working to motivate their bases in time for the August primary. For a look at those efforts, Arizona 360 invited Joe Holt from the Pima County Democratic Party and David Eppeheimer from the Pima County Republican Party to our studio for an analysis on what we can expect over the next few months. Let's begin with midterms are coming up. They can be a sleepy season, so to speak, but Joe, you say it's going to be an exciting time.
Oh, it's already been exciting, and it's going to be a really exciting primary on the Democratic Party side. And no, not the sleepy midterms this year.
Same thing for us. We have just crowded primaries in many of the races. So the primary season is going to be very active and very hard fought. And then the general is not going to be sleepy at all. You know, I think both parties see it as a very hard fought midterm. Yeah,
I think so too. And there's also a lot of money coming in from outside the state as well. I mean, it's not here yet, but it will be.
It will be.
It will be. It's coming.
What do you suppose is really driving the interest? I mean, we will have an open Senate seat. There are some other races that people will be watching.
Perhaps people think that Arizona is in transition politically. Of course, here in Pima County, we are fairly blue, and we plan to stay that way. I'm sorry.
And we plan to change that.
Wonderful. So, but I think that it's the presidency that's driving everything right now. The fear, the repulsion.
I have to weigh in on that.
Okay.
I do think the presidency is driving everything. But fear and repulsion are two words that I would object to. On the Republican side, we are motivated, we're energized, and we're excited about what President Trump is doing, delivering on campaign promises. The mood, what's driving Republicans in this primary is the excitement and the obvious, to us, opportunity we have to make some great gains, either nationally and certainly here in Pima County.
We've had some high-profile Republicans who have said that I'm not so comfortable with the current Republican Party. Is it facing a transition right now?
Oh, I think that the president has brought a change to the party, of course. There are certain Republicans that are uncomfortable with our current president. They're uncomfortable with his method of operation, which we as a party in Pima County are very comfortable with. We see exactly the things that he's doing, and we support them all.
Joe, is this a prime opportunity then for Democrats to capture those voters?
I think it is. You know, on the Democratic side in Pima County, you have people that talk routinely about the loss of democracy, essentially the loss of the voice of the people, the loss of the idea that we all have rights that should not be based on ability to pay, the right to education, health care, those types of things. And a great disturbance, and this is why I use the term repulsion, because it is a fairly strong term, but a great disappointment in the way that the office of the presidency of the United States is being conducted.
We see this tactic that Joe's outlining of running against the president, no matter what the office, as just a political tactic. The president is a very strong individual. He has very strong feelings, and Joe uses the word not democratic or some sort of attack on our democracy. The United States is not a democracy, it's a republic. And all of the politicians, certainly Democrat side, like to talk about democracy. Democracy is direct vote of the people into all offices across the board. We're a republic, and states have rights. You vote for representatives in a representative government.
Okay, this is tough, it's complex, and some might say politics is just turning ugly. Are we weeding out candidates people who could be very strong candidates but are not interested in the games that are played, the social media that's involved, just the media attention? I mean, are we losing potentially really strong people?
You know, actually, Lorraine, it's interesting because I've heard that as well, but that's really not what we've been seeing. You know, and I keep thinking about, you know, as David is describing his point of view, you know, I keep thinking about what I've actually been seeing. And what I've been seeing is a tsunami of volunteers, of people who have called us, knocked at our door, and say, I haven't been active for years and years. I have to do something. I think that maybe some people are turned off by the push and pull of politics, and sometimes I am too, quite frankly.
Well, I think that from the Republican side, we're seeing the same thing. Now, there are always people that you wish they'd run. You know, I wish that so-and-so that would step up and run. Joe describes one phenomenon from the Democrat point of view. We see the other side, where conservatives are knocking on the door and saying they've had enough. They've had enough of the far left movement of the Democrat Party. They've had enough of the progressivism that they see in the Democrat Party these days, and they want to step up and help stop it.
We are seeing a growing number of independents, or people saying, I'm an independent now, I don't really side with either party. Why do you suppose that is?
I think that when people don't register with either the Republican Party or the Democratic Party or the Green Party, it's like an ostrich putting its head in the sand. I'm sorry, because in the end, it's going to be a Democrat or it's going to be a Republican who's running the show, essentially.
Okay, David.
And I agree with that. And I think the independents and the PNDs, the party not declared, those two groups are numerous in the state and in the county. And I think they're making a statement, just like Joe said, they're making a statement of independence. I don't think it's so much sticking their head in the sand. I think that they're making a personal statement of, I'm independent, I make up my own mind. I don't follow any doctrine. And a great number of them vote Republican every time the ballot comes in. They vote Democrat every time the ballot comes in, but they don't want that label. Okay. And so our races very often are fought over those votes.
The primary is on August 28th. For a better sense of the dynamics at play in the months leading up to the midterm, we asked political professor Samara Klar for her insight. She represents the University of Arizona School of Government and Public Policy. We begin with her thoughts on what's driving interest in this election.
Well, there's been a ton of grassroots movement recently about education, about gun rights, a lot of opposition to the president. We have seen women in the Women's March gathering together and mobilize. So I think we are seeing an unusual amount of mobilization at the grassroots level, and that could, I think, indicate a higher turnout than we normally see for a midterm election.
Will we see more women running for positions?
Yeah, well, you know, we've seen a lot of women candidates recently, and particularly women of color. There are more African-American women who are running, particularly at state levels for office. So we're seeing, you know, certainly more women and more minorities getting involved at an elite level. I don't know if we'll necessarily see a lot of women winning. That's, you know, we don't have any indications quite yet, but there's definitely a lot of engagement.
Over the last few months, we heard a lot about Red for Ed movement, and the new hashtag is Remember in November. Do movements like that tend to really ignite some momentum as we move into a midterm?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the timing is right for the Red for Ed movement. The midterm is really right around the corner. Especially here in Arizona, there was such a huge wave of excitement around this movement. The organization was phenomenal. I thought the movement was really, really strong and seems to be having some effect, at least at the state legislative level. So yeah, I would expect to see that really sticking around in November. I think the people behind that movement are really committed.
This seemed to gain some, maybe some traction back when we had President Trump versus Hillary Clinton. People were talking. There was a lot of movement in social media.
Right.
And then Election Day, it really challenged everybody. Suddenly the polls weren't as accurate as we thought.
Yeah.
Are we losing faith in things like polling? Are we moving now to social media as our guide?
You know, I think both are helpful. To be honest, if there's any time where you should be confident in the polls, it's probably now, because pollsters have taken such a hard look in the mirror after 2016, and they really are trying to figure out what went wrong and how they can improve. It looks like one of the issues in 2016 is that a lot of the pollsters were not separating the college educated from those with more than a college education, with graduate school education. So they're really trying to create a more fine-tuned analysis of voters to figure out who is voting for whom and what are the odds that they're actually going to turn out and vote.
A unique time for Arizona. We have one open Senate seat.
Right.
We have another long-term senator who's openly battling a deadly brain cancer. In a recent book, Senator John McCain actually said, "This is my last term." Does that mean that we have additional eyes set on Arizona this year as we potentially have 2 Senate seats being looked at?
Absolutely. Even in 2016, before John McCain and Jeff Flake became such news items towards blue, there was some suggestion that Clinton could even win Arizona. We know she did not, and that Trump does have a fair amount of support here. But Arizona is a really interesting place for, I think, people who are interested in politics all over the country to look. We have an open Senate seat, we have changing demographics, we're a border state. I think there's a lot of reasons why Arizona is going to get a lot of attention in the midterms.
What about the younger generation that we've heard we'll see come this election?
You know, there's often a lot of optimism around the younger generation really coming out to vote, and that is often met with disappointment on the day after the election. I think the gun rights movement among the younger generation was really inspiring for a lot of young voters. We will see if they actually come out to vote. There's going to be a lot of sustained mobilization efforts that are needed in order for them to actually come out.
Does the research show these young people eventually mature and show up at the polls, or do they just drift off and we...
No, it appears that they do, and we have seen some interesting changes with the millennial generation. For example, females, women who are millennials are much more democratic than previous generations of women. So overall, that has pushed the millennial generation much more to the left. Given that they are so much more liberal, they may be increasingly likely to vote, you know, given that they're probably more opposed to the president than millennials generally tend to be. So there are some indications that they may turn out. We'll see.
Samara, thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Golden hour. And people are like, well, why are the chicks not being
Two of Southern Arizona's largest economic drivers are partnering up for a unique training opportunity. Medical personnel from Davis-Monthan Air Force Base are caring for some of the patients at Tucson Medical Center. It's an idea that's serving both the military and civilian populations. Arizona Public Media's Christopher Conover takes us inside both facilities for the story, and we should note some of the footage is graphic.
So if you use a tip, you get less of an area. If you use the kind of a side, you get a lot bigger area.
Dr. Michael Lavore is a retired vascular trauma surgeon, but he still sees patients at the wound care facility at Tucson Medical Center, where he's the medical director. His training involves more than medical school.
My first duty, or time I served in the service was 1967 as a Navy corpsman with the Marines. And during that time, we're taught how to take care of basic wounds and war wounds, etc. And then I continued on to become a physician and become a surgeon. And as anybody that ends up with gray hair, you've also ended up with experience. I also went back in the military 6-7 years ago, and as an officer, and served as a commanding officer at Forward Operating Base in Afghanistan.
So, number one reason for transporting people out of Kandahar.
That medical training and military history showed Dr. Lavore the medical personnel at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base needed more hands-on training. Davis-Monthan has a medical facility, but leadership knows the staff needs more experience.
We're an outpatient clinic, and we are lucky enough to serve a fairly healthy population. So by doing some of these cases in town and getting our folks on rotation, with the medical centers in town, it gives them that opportunity for their clinical currency to see some more complex cases that they need.
To get the medical team on base more hands-on opportunities, DM officials teamed up with Tucson Medical Center to set up week-long rotations through different departments at the hospital.
We do have small clinics there at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, but it does not compare to the units that we are going to be rotating here at TMC, which include the ICU, the emergency room, and here at the wound care center.
Lidocaine doesn't work because it can't penetrate. So to kind of pre-clean it a little bit, that's why I was kind of washing it.
The reason why we included the wound center in this rotation is because overseas we are more, there's more than likely going to be patients that have, various types of wounds that we as not only medical technicians but also nurses and providers are going to see, which gives us the ability to assess the specific type of wound and to treat accordingly.
Working with the doctors and nurses at TMC to get hands-on experience should only help the Air Force medical providers in their work.
When they go into a war zone or when they go into a zone where they're taking care of people that have been triaged out, you're going to see wounds, and be able to work with them and actually feel how you put a dressing on, the different techniques of doing something from some of these nurses that are highly experienced here, I think it's very beneficial.
Throughout much of the state, there's a growing need for qualified early childhood educators. The latest census shows that more than 60% of Arizona children between the ages of birth to 5 are in the care of someone other than their parents during the day. That's due in part to a growing number of single-parent households and more parents working outside the home. That means a larger scale need for quality caregivers, a top priority for Jessica Harrington from First Things First and Brian Stewart from Pima Community College. Let's begin with you, Jessica. When we talk about the three components of early childhood education,
Sure.
academic, emotional, and social, is there one that's more important than the others?
In early childhood, we know that when young children are developing, first of all, those first 1,000 days are absolutely critical, and they are going to lay the foundation for that young child's life and really send them on a trajectory. But when we look at what makes quality early learning so important, it's all three of those ideas. And what we really need are early educators who are really understanding and skilled at understanding this idea of how we can infuse optimal early learning experiences of all three, and really centered on developmentally appropriate practice. That takes a unique skill set, a blending of education, a blending of understanding how young children learn.
Now, First Things First and Pima Community College work very closely in training caregivers. The face of caregivers is changing. There's a greater need. I mean, more than 60% of children are, during their awake time during the day, there was someone who is not their parent. How important, Brian, is that person in front of the child?
It is our future. And as such, what we want is somebody who represents our values, who connects with our children like we do, and who actually can help them develop and nurture them in a way that, while we might be good at it, they're going to even be better at it. So it's essential for us to really understand and have people coming into the field that have that empathy and those connections and that ability to understand a child, just like a surgeon is going to understand how the surgery works.
Jessica, quality child care can be costly.
Absolutely.
One report said maybe $10,000 a year.
Yes.
Do parents seem to understand the value that they'd be placing in their child when they make that sort of investment?
29% of our young children are living in poverty. So you have to take those considerations into the factors of choosing quality childcare. And if you're trying to make ends meet with paying a rent or mortgage, as well as food and other necessities, sometimes it's really hard to look at what you can afford as far as for early care and education. And sometimes if it's between housing and food or early care and education, that's when we see families experiencing some real difficulty in choosing. I think families want the absolute best for their young children and want to, if they need to find care, they want it to be quality. They want to have strong relationships with their caregivers, but sometimes that's just not the reality given the poverty and the statistics and realities that Arizonans and specifically Pima County residents face.
2 out of 3 children here in our community won't go to preschool or an early childhood program. Then they go to kindergarten. They starting off at a deficit?
What we know is that the first 5 years of a young child's life, 90% of their brain is being developed. Yes. So we know that those experiences, whether they be positive or not so positive, those are framing and the kind of creating the foundation for young children to set that foundation for the rest of their lives into adulthood. So really every young child it's very situational. But what we know is that quality early learning is really beneficial for young children. We see that as they enter kindergarten, and we can see also the positive benefits when they are more likely to go to college, that they're more likely to be a community contributor and an outstanding citizen.
And Brian, if a little one goes into kindergarten, doesn't quite have the full foundation, there will be some challenges as they move from kinder to 3rd grade, which as we know is so important for reading and comprehension.
Yeah, what we know, looking at how the brain works, is that there are many, many periods in our entire life in which our brain is rapidly develops and is really sort of malleable and good at changing itself. Those first 5 years are one of those key elements, and then the next few years, up until about 3rd grade, is another period, and then there's others. At each of those periods, though, what the brain is doing is a little different. And so the educators know what's happening that's a little different to optimize that. So although you might come in and maybe you didn't have that, the teacher knows what needs to happen in order to get them up to grade level. And then if they don't miss that, then there's periods later. And it just gets harder and harder. And eventually we, as the adults, eventually get tired of trying to go through those processes. You can still do it, it's just harder on us. So as you can get them younger, it's much easier because the energy is there and it's just much more malleable.
Okay, my thanks to both of you.
Great,
thank you. And now to a younger demographic in the workplace. On average, in Arizona, around 60,000 high school students graduate every year. It's unclear how many will pursue higher education, but nationwide, a growing number of graduates are pursuing the military or the workforce. Here in southern Arizona, Tucson Youth Development works with students and employers to create lasting relationships. Jay Slaughter is the executive director. We begin the conversation talking about finding a place for students who are considered high risk.
There's a term, they're called disconnected youth, okay? And so the highest percentage of them, and really with our programs that we do through contracts with Pima County, when they come into the program, they can't be in school. They have to be out of school, have been out of school for a period of time, at least 30 days. They're not working, and so literally they are disconnected in many ways. And so, you know, the demographic that we are working with is to bring in these disconnected youth, help them see that there's hope for the future, that there's opportunity, and help them see that there's a path.
Is college for everyone?
A little bit of background about our organization. Tucson Youth Development serves students in 2 charter high schools, and these charter high schools serve students who are considered to be kind of at risk in many ways. And so our students in our charter high schools, most of them don't have the idea that they are there to go on to college after they finish. Most of them, the greatest percentage by far, are looking at some way to finish their high school career and then maybe get a certificate in some area, a trade perhaps, and go right on into the world of work.
See if we can replicate this and see what you can do with this simple character.
Now, these are individuals who will immediately contribute to the local economy. Is it out of necessity or is it out of want? Is it perhaps a mixture of both?
I think initially it may be out of necessity more than out of want. I think a lot of the young people that we have the privilege to work with find themselves in situations that they need to keep a roof over their head. Some of them have their own children. In many cases, they're taking care of their nuclear families. And out of necessity, they are finding that they want to get their high school diploma because they realize that that's going to improve their career opportunities. But And then out of necessity, they have to find a way to do that and still meet the, the daily requirements of a life.
Are these students prepared for the workforce? I mean, these are not necessarily menial jobs that they'll be getting themselves into, but you're preparing them for other things.
The types of jobs that our workforce development specialists really try to help students and program participants move into are jobs that take higher skill levels. And so one of the things that we are able to do through federal grant funding that essentially is passed down to us through the state and through Pima County is we are able to give, maybe in a year, as many as 500 or 600, 700 young people opportunities to get paid to have their first experience in an area that they might have interest. We have a significant number of our participants who we help get placed in a medical office, dental or medical office. Through our grant funding, we're able to provide their pay during the time that they're working, and it's a certain number of hours, but then after they finish their hours, they have some practical hands-on experience, but it's the kind of experience that gives them an opportunity to test the waters, if you will. Sometimes the young people have an idea that they might want to work in one field or another. Through our programs, we can help them get into a job in that field. Then we're able to help them move into the next step after that.
They have a foundation for a long-term career.
They do, they do. And one of the things that we really focus on too is not only the specific skill set that goes with a career, but also it's focus on the work readiness skills, the things that they have to take into consideration to be able to be successful.
Tucson Youth Development is working to prepare these students for the workplace. Are employers ready to greet them when they walk through their doors and say, I'm not college bound, I want to work instead?
The answer is absolutely yes. We have workforce development specialists and other people on our staff who actually go out and do what we call job development with potential employers. And of course, when we can go to an employer and say, we have grant funding that we can place a young person in your office or in your business or in your shop, and we're going to pay the first 300 hours of experience. With the state of the economy and the world of work today, there's a lot of jobs, and a lot of employers are really looking for young people to come in and fill those jobs.
All right, thank you, Jay. That's all for this week. We welcome your thoughts and suggestions. Email us at arizona360@azpm.org. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.